You are 22 years old, sitting in a windowless room on the 42nd floor of Goldman Sachs in Manhattan, and a 40-year-old man in a $5,000 suit is about to teach you the only rule on Wall Street that has ever mattered. He slides a spreadsheet across the desk. The spreadsheet has a single line of red on it, and the red line is a number with 7 digits in it, and the number is not good news for anyone whose job it is to look at it. He says, "Who put this trade on?" You say, "I did." He does not yell. He does not raise his voice. He just looks at you for a long moment across the desk, and he says very quietly, "Congratulations. You just lost more money in one morning than your father will make in the rest of his life." You do not say anything. There is nothing to say. He lets the silence sit. He lets it become a physical thing in the room, a third person in the meeting, heavier than either of you. Then he leans forward and he smiles, and he says the sentence that you will repeat, silently, to yourself, every morning of the next 30 years of your career. You are not here to be right. You are here to survive being wrong. He hands you a coffee. He tells you to get back on the desk. He never mentions the trade again. You are 22 years old, and you have just been taught by a man who will die of a heart attack at 49, the only thing you will ever need to know about the game you are about to play. Level 1. The Analyst. Wall Street did not recruit you. You tricked it. You grew up in a town in western Pennsylvania that had one traffic light and a closed steel mill. Your father worked for the railroad. Your mother waited tables at a diner on Route 22. You were the first person in your family to finish high school, and the second was not going to finish high school because your younger brother was already working on your uncle's farm at 15. You went to Penn State on an academic scholarship. You majored in math because math was the only thing you had ever been better at than anyone else in the room. And you figured out, sometime in your sophomore year, that the richest people in America were people who used math for a living, and the richest of those people worked in a place called Wall Street. You had never been to New York. You had never worn a suit. You did not know what a hedge fund was. You applied to Goldman Sachs through the regular career fair process and got rejected. You applied again through a connection one of your professors made for you and got rejected again. You took a bus to New York in the winter of your senior year with $47 in your pocket, and you stood outside the Goldman Sachs building on Broad Street in a suit from a thrift store, and you waited for 5 hours until you saw a man you recognized from the firm's website walking out for lunch, and you introduced yourself on the sidewalk. The man laughed at you. Then he gave you his card. Then he got you an interview. Then he told you, in the interview, that the only reason he was recommending you was that he wanted to see if Goldman could break a kid from western Pennsylvania who had ambushed him on a sidewalk in February. You started on the trading floor at the end of June. You worked 90-hour weeks for 2 years. You slept under your desk 3 nights out of 5. You learned how to read a bond yield curve before you learned how to drink coffee. You got fat and then got skinny again from the stress. You made more money in year 2 than your father made in his entire career at the railroad, and you sent almost all of it home because the money did not mean anything to you. The money was not why you were there. You were there because the man on Broad Street laughed at you. You were there to make him stop laughing. You are 24 years old. You have just lost $7 million of Goldman's money in 40 minutes, and your boss has decided that this is the moment he is going to promote you. Level 2. The Trader. The $7 million loss is a gift. You do not understand this at first. You think the meeting in the windowless room is the end of your career. You think they are about to walk you out of the building with a cardboard box full of your personal items, and your name will never appear on a Wall Street paycheck again. Instead, the man in the $5,000 suit hands you a bigger book. He says, "I don't trust anyone on this desk who has not blown up yet. You just blew up. Now I trust you." You are promoted from analyst to associate. Your book doubles. The risk limits on your book triple. You are 24 years old, and you are now allowed to put on positions that are larger than the entire market capitalization of the town you grew up in. You stop calling your mother once a week. You start calling her once a month. Then once a quarter. Then not at all, because every conversation starts with her asking you if you are eating, and you do not remember the last time you ate anything that was not delivered to your desk in a plastic container. You make partner track at 27. The firm gives you a bonus that year that is exactly 7 times larger than the loss you took at 24. And you understand for the first time that Wall Street is not punishing you for the loss. Wall Street is pricing the loss. The loss was the tuition. The bonus is the return on the tuition. Everybody on the desk paid something like it at some point. And the ones who paid it and learned from it are the ones who get the desks on the other side of the glass wall. At 29, you meet a woman at a charity gala you did not want to go to. She is a lawyer at a firm whose name you recognize. She tells you within an hour of meeting you that she is not going to marry a man who works on a trading desk, because every trader's wife she has ever met is unhappy. You marry her anyway. You get married on a Saturday in Westchester. You are back on the desk on Monday morning at 6:45. She does not speak to you for the entire week. You do not notice. You are 30 years old. You have just left Goldman Sachs to start your own hedge fund with $200 million of other people's money, and in exactly 18 months, a bank called Lehman Brothers is going to die and take half of your fund with it. Level 3. The fund. You call the fund something simple. One word, your last name. You put it on the door of a small office on 57th Street that used to be a dentist's office. You hire 3 people. You trade 9 hours a day. And you do research the other 7. You sleep on a couch that you bought at IKEA because you did not have time to go to a furniture store. For the first 18 months, you are a genius. You are up 28%. You are in the Wall Street Journal. You are on a panel at a conference in Greenwich with 3 men who used to interview you at Goldman. Your fund grows from 200 million to 600 million without you having to ask a single investor for money. The investors come to you now. Then it is September 2008. Lehman goes on a Sunday. You find out at a dinner in Midtown when your phone starts vibrating under the table and does not stop for 4 hours. You excuse yourself. You walk out of the restaurant, you get in a cab, you go back to the office. You do not leave the office for 11 days. In those 11 days, your fund loses 41%. Some of it is Lehman exposure. Some of it is counterparty panic. Some of it is the correlated unwind of trades you thought were uncorrelated. You spend every waking hour on the phone with your prime broker, your risk officer, your lawyers, your investors. You eat nothing. You drink 17 cups of coffee a day. You sleep in 20-minute stretches on the floor of your office. On the 11th day, your wife walks into the office. She has your daughter in her arms. Your daughter is 4 months old. She sets the baby down on your desk. She says she has never met you. Neither have I. Pick one of us to keep. Then she leaves. You look at the baby. The baby looks at you. The baby does not know who you are. You pick up the phone. You call your head of risk. You say, unwind everything that isn't investor capital. Take the losses. I am going home. You go home. You do not come back to the office for 6 weeks. Your fund ends the year down 31%. You write a letter to investors. The letter is 1 page. The letter says the losses were your fault and you will be returning capital to anyone who wants it out at a discount to book with no lockup. 74% of your investors leave. You keep the rest. You are 32 years old. You have lost 3/4 of your investors. Your wife is sleeping in the guest room. And the only reason your fund is still open is that the man from Goldman Sachs who taught you how to survive being wrong has just wired you $50 million of his own money. Level 4. The comeback. He calls you the week of your letter. He is 60 now. He has been retired from Goldman for 4 years. He lives in a house on the beach in Florida that he bought with the bonus money from a decade of being right about almost everything. He calls you at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday, and you pick up the phone on the 3rd ring because his name is the only name on earth that will make you pick up the phone during those 6 weeks at home. He says, I want to give you $50 million. You say, why? He says, because I am going to die in a few years, and I would like to be remembered as the man who bet on the right kid after 2008. He does not know when he says this that he is going to be right about the year he dies. It will be 4 years from that phone call, a heart attack at the beach house. You will find out from his daughter on a voicemail. But in the phone call on that Tuesday morning, he just says, don't make me look stupid, kid. The $50 million arrives on Friday. You go back to the office on Monday. You rebuild. You cut your team from 8 to 4. You cut your strategies from 9 to 2. You stop trying to be everywhere. You pick the 2 things you know better than anyone else in the world, and you put every dollar of the fund into those 2 things, and for 3 years, you grind. 7%, 11%, 9%. You are not a genius anymore. You are a survivor. You are exactly what the man from Goldman taught you to be. By 2014, the fund is back to $2 billion. By 2017, 4. By 2022, 11. You are on magazine covers you do not read. You are on television shows you do not watch. You are invited to galas you do not attend. You do attend your daughter's school plays. All of them. Every single one. You are the only father in the front row of every elementary school production of Peter Pan and The Wizard of Oz and A Christmas Carol in a 5-year span. You are terrible at it. You do not know what to say to the other parents. You do not know what to say to your daughter afterward. But you are there, and you are there, and you are there, because the baby your wife set on your desk in September 2008 is the only investor in your life whose money you are never going to lose. You are 46 years old, your fund is worth $11 billion, and the only person who has ever told you they were proud of you has been dead for 9 years. Level 5. The legacy. You retire from the fund at 50. You do not call it retirement. You call it a transition. You hand the portfolio to the 2 partners you have trained for the last decade. You keep an office on the same hall as theirs. You come in 3 days a week. You still read every research note. You still know every position, but you do not put on trades anymore. You build a foundation in your mother's name. You put your younger brother, who never finished high school, on the board. You send the kids of the woman who waited tables with your mother at the diner on Route 22 to college on scholarships they did not know existed until an envelope showed up in their mailboxes in April. You go home for dinner at 6. Your wife, who once said she would not marry a traitor, has been married to you for 24 years now. Your daughter is in graduate school. You talk to her every Sunday. You still do not know what to say to her half the time, but you pick up when she calls, and you fly to her when she asks, and you have not, in the last 15 years, missed a single thing that she has asked you to show up for. You are a man who blew up at 24 and blew up again at 31. You are a man who lost 3/4 of his investors in 11 days. You are a man who had to be rescued by the only person on Wall Street who understood why he was worth rescuing. You are a man who survived being wrong enough times that being right eventually came back. That was the whole job. You go to the beach house in Florida once a year, by yourself, on the anniversary of the heart attack. You sit on the sand in front of the man's empty house. You do not say anything out loud. You just look at the water for a while, and you think about the kid in the thrift store suit who ambushed a stranger on a sidewalk in February, and you think about the $7 million loss, and you think about the baby on the desk in September 2008. And then you drive back to the airport and you fly home to your wife, and you sleep for 9 hours in your own bed, and you wake up on Monday morning, and you go back to the office, because survival is not a thing you finish. It is only a thing you keep doing.